Hello and welcome back to the Wargamer and another painting tutorial. This time I'll be showing you how to paint the Italian Gabbiano from Warlord Games' Cruel Seas. For this tutorial I'll be using the Army Painter range of paint. Start off by painting your ship by applying a primer. This will give us a better surface to paint from by allowing the later layers of paint to adhere to the surface of the ship. We would recommend a spray primer, particularly the Army Painter's Uniform Grey Primer. The hull of the ship already has its base colour of uniform grey, so we don't need to do much else to it. However, to help bring out those details, we can dry brush a lighter coloured paint over the surface. For this task, we'll be using ash grey. To dry brush, take a medium-sized brush and dip it into your paint. Remove the excess onto a piece of paper until only a small amount of paint remains in the bristles. Then lightly drag your brush over the surface of the ship. You'll find that the paint will gather on the hard edges and raise details, leaving the darker uniform grey visible in the recesses. By dry brushing in this way, we can quickly and easily pick out many of the ship's details. To achieve a blue-green colour on the deck, we will need to mix together Wizard Orb and Wolf Grey. Mix them together in roughly equal parts, but if you want to have a slightly darker colour, simply add more Wolf Grey to the mixture. With your paint mixed together, you can now paint the entirety of the ship's deck. However, leave the deck of the ship's prow unpainted for the moment. To paint the 6 lifeboats around the ship, we'll be using the base coat of Phoenix Flames. As this is quite a light paint, you may find you need more than one coat. It is recommended that you thin your paint with a little water first and apply a couple of thin coats to get an even coverage of the yellow. To paint the camouflage, depth charges and crew uniforms, we'll be painting all of these details using Necromancer Cloak. To begin with, we'll be painting the camouflage on the ship's sides. Start off by painting straight lines to mark out the outer edges of your camouflage areas. Using a thin brush and a slightly watered down paint will make this task much easier. Once these lines have been completed, you can then fill in the areas between them using the same paint. With the camouflage pattern completed, you can then continue to apply the Necromancer Cloak to some of the smaller details on the ship. These include the crew uniforms and all of the various depth charges scattered across the ship's deck. For the life jackets that the crew are wearing, we'll be using Hemp Rope. Again, use a small brush and take your time. The faces and hands of the crew members are very small, so it's not necessary to paint them. However, if you're feeling brave, you can base coat these small areas using Kobold Skin. For the red and white stripes that feature on the forward deck of the ship, we'll be starting off with Spaceship Exterior to paint the white stripes. Much like how we tackled the camouflage pattern in the last step, start by painting the outer edges of the white bands first. Keep the bands evenly spaced and be sure to use a thin brush. Once the lines have been painted, you can then fill them in, creating alternating white stripes across the deck. To paint the red stripes on the forward deck, we'll be using Vampire Red. To paint the stripes, simply fill in the empty blocks between the white stripes we painted in the previous step. In addition to the deck, we'll also be using Vampire Red to paint 4 thin lines onto the sides of the ship's lifeboats. Paint these lines across the front, back and each side of the boat's edges. With all of our base coats completed, we can now begin applying some washes to the miniatures. The first wash will be using Dark Tone, however we won't be applying it straight from the pot as it will be much too strong. Instead, we want to create a mixture of 1 part Quickshade mixing medium and 1 part Dark Tone. This will reduce the strength of the wash, creating a more subtle shading. With your wash mixed, you can now apply it across any grey areas of the miniature. Focus this wash into the recesses of the hull, but for the remaining sections such as the depth charges and crew uniforms, you can apply the wash across the whole area. The wash should gather in the recesses, creating the effect of shadows, which will help to improve the level of detail. After allowing the dark tone wash to dry, we can now apply a wash of soft tone over the yellow lifeboats and the crew's faces. Follow the same steps as with our previous wash, and remember to mix in the Quickshade mixing medium once again. And here we have the completed Italian Gabbiano. You may have noticed a few extra details such as the markings, paint chips and rust, which I applied using the same steps detailed in my Cruel Seas extra details video. Whilst I focus on the Gabbiano for this video, you could easily apply the same techniques to other ships in the Italian fleet. You can find a full list of all the paints that I've used in this tutorial in the description below, along with any other equipment that I've used to create this video, such as my everlasting wet palette. If you enjoyed this video, do let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so already, be sure to check out my Patreon page if you would like to support me in making these videos. If you have any questions or would just like to chat with others who enjoy my channel, I've set up a Discord server which you can find a link to in the description below. So the only thing left to say is, thanks for watching, and goodbye.